Okay, we are on page 93 in the book, and we're going to camp out in two places in the Word. So keep a finger in Psalm 45 and Revelation 19. My heart overflows with a pleasing theme. I address my verses to the King. My tongue is like the pen of a ready scribe. Psalm 45, verse 1. Isn't that an awesome start to a psalm? This is a treasure in the middle of this divine hymnal of the book of Psalms. It truly is this little gem right in the middle of the psalm. And this song has an inscription at the top that tells us what it means. To the choir master, according to Lilies, a maskil of the sons of Korah, a love song. What is a maskil? Now, anytime you see a psalm that says that it's a maskil, it was a title for a psalm that was instructional, that was going to teach you something of wisdom, that was meant to be understood spiritually. They taught it in the classroom. This psalm is intended to be understood spiritually. So that's important. That's one part of it. The second title of this psalm was what? That it's a love song, right? So we have a maskil and a love song that's an orient for a wedding ballad. So here's the outline of Psalm 45. Verse 2 through 9 is addressed to the groom. Verse 10 through 17 is addressed to the bride. And we're going to read through it and keep that outline in mind. You'll see how it switches from singing to one and then singing to the other. So it starts with the groom, verse 2 through 9, and it goes to the bride, verse 10 through 17. So let's read those verses. You are the most handsome of the sons of men. Pause. Who are we talking about? Grace is poured upon your lips. Therefore, God has blessed you forever. Gird your sword on your thigh, O mighty one, in your splendor and majesty. In your majesty, ride out victoriously for the cause of truth and meekness and righteousness. Let your right hand teach you awesome deeds. Your arrows are sharp in the heart of the king's enemies. The peoples fall under you. Your throne, O God, is forever and ever. The scepter of your kingdom is a scepter of uprightness. You have loved righteousness and hated wickedness. Therefore, God, your God, has anointed you with the oil of gladness beyond your companions. That is the outline for who? The groom, right? But did you pick up on anything with this description of the groom? It's like a spitting image of Jesus in Revelation, isn't it? Like they pulled from the text. This is not a wedding song for the mortal. This is not about a person, right? It can't be with these descriptions of the groom, but an ode preserved for the King of Kings alone. It's the truth about the book of Ruth also. Psalm 45 is a prophetic portrayal of Jesus and the bride, just like the book of Ruth. The book of Ruth is specifically for Jesus and the church, and it's really unique that way, being an Old Testament book. Psalm 45 is unique in the same way, that the signature is for Jesus and his bride. So, if it parallels so well for the groom, it probably does that for the bride. Last week, we saw the bride was chosen right? She went through the covenant with the groom, right? Where they signed the contract and they sipped the wine together. And he had gone to his father's house to build that add-on honeymoon suite, right? We saw that. Meanwhile, she's supposed to watch while she waits. She had been consecrated, right? She wore a veil out in public that marked her as taken, as a bride in waiting. And at night, she would make herself ready just in case. Then she heard a sound resounding. The groom is winding through the streets to come get her. So she gets dressed and she meets him from her house in the streets, and then he takes her the rest of the way to the father's house, and that's as far as we got. So that's where we're going to pick up this wedding tradition. So Revelation chapter 4 verse 1, after this I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven. And the first voice which I had heard speaking to me like a trumpet said, "Come up here, and I will show you what must take place after this." So the trumpet blows for us as well. Remember, we are in the timeline of the pre-tribulation view. In a moment, in a twinkling of an eye, and at the sound of the trumpet, it says this in verse 2. At once I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne stood in heaven, with one seated on the throne. This is the next step. The trumpet blows, and then we are swept away into heaven, and immediately, right away, we are before the altar. We are at the throne, and the vows are there exchanged. So back to Psalm 45:10. We're going to look at the bride's part. Keep a finger in Revelation. We're going to toggle. What is the requirement of the bride to vow to the groom? Forget your house. Now, how does that parallel the first wedding in Genesis? What were they supposed to do? Leave and cleave. So the first thing the bride says is, I will forget my people, my former house, forsake all others for you. Leave and cleave. It's the same vows as the very first vows. When we get to heaven, the former things of earth will melt away. So shall the King greatly desire your beauty. He is your Lord. Worship him. Done. How can she not? Right? How can she not? In honor of her husband king, her heart is to bow in adoration for him only. The one whose sole desire is for her. Well, okay. I think I can handle that. Worship him. And according to the original Hebrew, this word is fierce. Wait longingly, to physically desire after, and to greatly covet. Because who does he now have in his arms? His bride, you, right? And that's where this word is used. So at the throne, at the altar, she vows her admiration only to him and to forsake all others. And he has his desire focused purely on her, his bride. It's a wedding. Bride, forsake all others for your husband king. Groom, your fierce desire will be for your bride. It's the vows. And where are these vows happening? Where are we? At the throne room, right? At the altar. They take place at the foot of the throne amidst one magnificent worship service we cannot even imagine. Revelation chapter 4 and 5 is one gigantic worship service with every tongue and every tribe lifting up their voice in this wedding ballad to the King, singing at the throne. This is you and your King. This is true. This is true. It's true. It's going to happen. Worship ascending is the ultimate expression of intimacy to the Lord. And in heaven, we will have no barriers to worship the King of Kings. And we will want to, and we will sound good, and it'll be awesome. And Jesus, the bridegroom, is at the center of it all. All eyes are on him. All eyes. From every tribe and every tongue and every nation, all eyes will be on the King of Kings, the bridegroom. Then comes the honeymoon. That's next, right? There's vows, and then there's a honeymoon. Now, back to Jewish tradition, the bride and groom are escorted to the father's house. They have their vows, okay? A Jewish wedding lasts 7 days. It's 7 days long. That is a long party to put together, right? 7 days. Okay, so during those 7 days, the wedding guests would feast and party and hang out right there at the father's house for 7 days. The couple, though, they get hidden away, tucked away in that bridal chamber that he sweated and toiled over, right? The bridal chamber, that's what we were talking about. So they spend the 7 days in the bridal chamber. Remember last week we talked about how he needed to make that thing awesome. And it needed to be stocked for 7 days. And she needed to have everything she could possibly need inside the bridal chamber because she does not come out for 7 days. Ever. She stays inside. He comes in and out a few times if he needs to, but she stays tucked away and she is happy. It is usually the only vacation they ever got was their wedding. So for her to just be doted on and pampered and eat whatever she wanted and sleep whenever she wanted, and her groom is there and she's like, I could really use an ice cream sundae, and he goes out and gets it and brings it back. I mean, she is in heaven. She's in heaven right now. Okay, so that is how traditionally it worked out. And there, finally, the marriage would be consummated. Remember, we talked about how it seemed like they had been engaged like 4 times. There's the betrothal and the covenant and then like all these steps to it. And actually, legally, they would have to get divorced if they wanted to break it off. They're legally married even though they've never lived together. They haven't actually had the wedding. And nothing has been consummated. Well, this is when all that comes together. And so it will be for us. For 7 years. 7, got that? For 7 years, while the earth is going through what we call the tribulation, or the wrath of the Lamb, or Jacob's trouble, or Daniel's 70th week, there's lots of names. Any of those are the same 7 years. While earth is going through that, the bride is tucked away in heaven, enjoying honeymoon bliss with Jesus. This is super cool because the wedding psalm gives us a peek, though, into the bridal chamber where Revelation doesn't. All glorious is the princess in her what? Chamber, with robes interwoven with gold. The first 2 words of this verse is what? All glorious. All glorious. is the bride in her chamber. The bride is completely glorified. Yes! Sanctification is over! Right? That's what we're working for. From sanctification to glorification, right? That never happens here. We go through sanctify until we are glorified, right? That is how the bride is described in the bridal chamber. Fully satisfied, lacking nothing, fully belonging to him. All glorified, which means there are finally no barriers between us. Because right now we see him through what? Glass darkly, right? And we're consecrated, which means there's a veil between our face, right? We can see, but things look a little cloudy. And he told us that's how it's going to be. Right now we see things dimly. We see things darkly, but there, everything will be known. There will be no barriers between us. We will be all glorious in our chamber. That is a happy day. That's a happy day. And for his delight only, for his eyes only, this is the cool part. For his eyes only, he will dress us, give us what kind of robing? Gold, right? Gold robes. We're tucked away. So who's it for? Him. This is the next step. The honeymoon lasts how long in the Jewish tradition? 7 days. It lasts how long prophetically? 7 years. Okay, so after that is the bride's presentation. According to the pre-tribulation timeline, when is the bride seen again in the book of Revelation? She's in chapter 2 and 3, and that's called the, you guys remember? Church age, right? That's now. We're the church and we're stuck on earth. Okay, good. Okay, and then there's the trumpet call. This is pre-trib timeline. Trumpet call. And then we have 7 years, right? And that's the tribulation down here, and for us it's the honeymoon, right? Chapter 4 and 5 is the vows at the altar, the worship service, the seals are opened, all that jazz, all that cool stuff. The church is there, right, at the throne with every tribe and every nation, a sea of people, and then she is tucked away, right? And then she appears again when? Revelation 19. That's right. So that's where we're going to be. Then I heard what seemed to be the voice of a great multitude, like the roar of many waters, and like the sound of mighty peals of thunder, crying out, Hallelujah! For the Lord our God, the Almighty, reigns. Let us rejoice and exult and give him the glory. For the what? Marriage of the who? Lamb has come, and his bride has made herself ready. It was granted her to clothe herself with fine linen, bright and pure, for the fine linen is the righteous deeds of the saints. In Jewish wedding tradition, going back to that, at the end of 7 days, the groom would announce his bride. He would come out of the chamber and announce his bride. The bride would come out then for the first time in 7 days, come out of the bridal chamber, and they would officially announce themselves husband and wife. And they together would be seen at the wedding with their guests together. Does that make sense? So at the end of the 7-year heavenly honeymoon, all of heaven erupts with the roar of thunderous applause. This is true. This is really going to happen. And who appears? The bride. Here comes the bride. This is true. Hallelujah. This is true. You will be presented as the wife of the Lamb. You will be clothed in what now? Fine linen, bright and pure. Doesn't that sound lovely? Like a wedding dress? For the fine linen is the righteous deeds of the saints. Other than appearance, other than what it looks like, what else does it say about the wedding attire? Verse 8, it was granted her, right? Did she buy that dress? It was granted her. Well, yeah, that makes sense because we have no righteousness or righteous deeds of our own. They are what? Filthy rags. We didn't buy that dress. We didn't do that. Jesus has robed us with his righteousness. That's what we've been told. So we know that. So here we are in a white dress. Well, everything that I've learned in my Bible says that I didn't do that. I've got filthy rags. So how did I get this dress? Revelation tells us it was granted. When you are presented on the arm of your husband king, standing in all of his majesty, when you will be in a white dress that you did not earn or deserve. This wedding dress is a gift. It was granted to her. It's a wedding gift. The wedding feast. The Jewish wedding traditions is that all the guests would gather with the bride and groom. Now they're out of the chamber, right? They get announced and they all break bread together. This is where the big wedding feast comes in. And it was a big to-do. It was the best party ever. And everyone got off work for it, and you wanted to be invited to it. Everybody went to the wedding feast. Everybody. This was a huge thing. Jesus went to a wedding, remember? They ran out of wine. Why? Because it lasts 7 days. Right? I mean, it's a 7-day party. They ran out of wine, but even Jesus went to the weddings. It was a big to-do. The best food, the best banquet, everybody's there. Verse 9 says this, the angel said to me, this is John, right? John's the author. The angel said to me, write this, blessed are those who are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb. Remember the contract? And there was wine between the bride and groom, right? And then the groom and the bride, they decide together, they make a covenant together that they won't drink again until the wedding feast. This is what Jesus said in the upper room. Listen, I'm going to go prepare a place. I'm going to get everything ready. And I'm not going to drink with you again until the kingdom, until heaven, until the wedding feast. This is the day he was talking about. That's it as far as Jewish wedding traditions go, right? So she's chosen, there's a covenant, they're engaged, she is consecrated, she waits, he builds, he blows the trumpet, she meets him in the street, he takes her to the Father's house. They exchange the vows, they get tucked away for a 7-day honeymoon, they come out, here comes the bride, they have a wedding feast, happily ever after. That is awesome. Psalm 36:8 says this, they feast on the abundance of your house, and you give them drink from the river of your delights. Isn't that a cool verse? And you know what? These are the true words of God. This is true. The truth is that this is going to happen. The wedding and the feast and the glorified and the worship service, the happily ever after, that's really going to happen. This is true. This is true. This isn't a fairy tale. This isn't something some wackos made up. This is really going to happen. Revelation is an inspired book, just like all the other ones. You guys believe that, don't you? This is true. This is going to happen. The wedding of the King of Kings with you on his arm. That is true. And the cross was for that day. Isn't that just mind-blowing? That he paid the bridal price just to be with us? Why? We don't even like us. And his delight, he's fiercely in love with you. That is true. He came to reconcile a bride, and that is you by name. You were the joy set before him. Tonight, we are going to spend some time with our bridegroom in communion. Because this is what the Lord said. He said in the upper room, the same night that he said, I'm going to do this with you again later. That same night, he said, this is my body and this is my blood. And do this often in remembrance of me. Because he wants us to remember the bridal price that he paid for us. Father, I pray in this time that you would whisper to each one of these ladies individually to tell them they have a divine romance with you. And Lord, the picture of a marriage, of a wedding, that's a painful thing for some of us. But Lord, you are a perfect groom. You are perfect in all of your ways, in all of your aspects. As much as you are faithful to us, you also fiercely love us. Lord, I pray that you would teach us to see you as our groom forever. Lord, that we would have eyes only for you and forsake all others. Lord, I pray that this communion time would be different than other times that we take communion, Lord, that we would remember the bridal price, remember that you're a kinsman redeemer. Be thankful, Lord, that you are going to exchange our rags for riches one day, Lord. Right now we say, I am Ruth, but we hear you say, but you are mine.
The fullness of your grace is here with me. The richness of your beauty's all I see. The brightness of your glory has arrived. In your presence, God, I'm completely satisfied. For you, I sing, I dance, I rejoice in this divine romance. Lift my heart in my hands to show my love, to show my love. Ooh, yeah. deep, deep flood. An ocean flows from you, of deep, deep love. It's filling up the room. Your innocent blood has washed my guilty life. In your presence, God, I'm completely satisfied. For you, I sing, I dance, and I rejoice in this divine romance. Lift my heart in my hands to show my love. And all for you I sing, I dance, and I rejoice in this divine romance. I lift my heart in my hands to show my love, to show my love. Ooh. I'm sailing on a ship that's bound for life. I wrestle with the wind against the tide. I leave it all behind to reach for more. I'm sailing on to where the water's running sweet and bright. The sun is rising in the eastern sky, and I leave it all behind to reach for more. I'm sailing on to your golden shore. Ooh, to your golden shore. The time is now for lifting souls. The time is now for letting go. So from your skin to your core, let light and love come rushing through the door. It's time to make your stand, to put your heart in greater hands. So from your skin to your core, let light and love come rushing through the door. It's time to make your stand, so put your heart in greater hands. So from your skin to your core, let a light and love come rushing through the door. Come rushing through your door.
There is one who sits on the rightful throne as Lord over all the earth. Nations melt like wax at the sound of his coming, and evil he triumphs underfoot. He is magnificent to gaze upon, beautiful, flawless. He is strength and perfection. But there is a woman, she is filth, an outcast void of a future and a hope, whose debauchery forbade her entrance into his presence. His name she dares not utter on her unclean lips. She is ugly, disgraceful, and damaged. He is king, she is nothing, the bridegroom and I. And yet with my shame fully exposed in his glorious light, his desire was to make me his. He determined to move heaven and hell to win my heart. And that's just what he did. On the violent cross, he hung to satisfy the price and ransomed me, his bride. Oh, the incomprehensible thought of grace poured out from his veins to save a wretch like me. How can this be? I am dirt and clay. How could he want me as his beloved? But veiled and consecrated, I wait for the trumpet call of my bridegroom. And one day I will exchange vows with my kinsman, be held in his arms and transformed into something glorious for his pleasure and delight. Then I will be presented on the arm of the king as his wife, pure and white. And one day, someday, I will be made his.